Okay, so I've opened up my boilerplate sketch, something that I've saved so I can just continually reference it as I'm going. This is something that I have linked below in the video, hopefully, and that you can open up and maybe save. It's a good practice to have something like this so that when you go to start, you don't have to remember to do all these little pieces, like include the library and set up your object and get the little green button working. So again, just save this. It's a good starting point. In the bottom right hand corner of my screen here, you can see I have this super assembly. The last video you've seen about the servo shows how to set up the servo on this channel. These two are going to be shown in a future video, but I have them here as I'm doing this video. It's sort of out of order. So we're going to look at how to get the servo set up today. That's this thing right here. So I've hooked up my servo like I've shown you in the previous video, and the data cable has run out to the Prism controller here, and I have it plugged in on servo port 1, making sure that the color coding matches up with the positive and negative on the board. Okay, so yellow on the left, red in the middle, black in the right. So what's going to happen here is when I power up my board, we're going to code it and get this servo moving. Okay, so in our book on page 168, okay, sorry for that jump. On page 168, we can find set speed of a servo motor, we can set the position of a servo motor, and there's a few other functions there. And I think what we'll do is focus on the set servo position for this video. So in line 2, we're going to say servo control. Okay. That way we have this as a reference point for future videos or future tasks to understand how to get our servo to work. So what we're going to do here is jump down to our program loop. We're going to enter and we're going to call our Prism. Okay, so we need to access our Prism, which is our controller. So we type in Prism all lowercase, and we're going to use the function dot notation again. Okay, so after Prism dot, we're going to call set servo speed. Okay, and actually no, sorry, we're going to do set servo position. When it turns orange, that means it is a function included in the library. And then what we're going to do is start our function with the two brackets with a semicolon, and we're going to review the actual function. Set servo position has two arguments, the first being the servo number, the second being a position. We can see again that servo number and position are both integers, okay, so a positive or a negative whole number. But we do see that the range is actually limited 1 through 6, which aligns with the 1 through 6 here on our board, and a position of 0 to 180 degrees, something we talked about in a previous video about how this only turns 180 degrees. So what we might want to do is set the servo position on port 1, because that's what I've plugged into, to let's say 0 degrees. Then what we're going to do is call a delay statement of, let's say, 1/5 of a second, so 200 microseconds. So 1/5 of a second, and then we're going to maybe copy these two lines. Rather than always typing things out, we can copy and paste, save some time. And let's say, again, servo 1 to 90 degrees and servo 1 to 180. So what we should see here is a loop where the servo goes to 0, then it goes to 90 and goes to 180. One thing I would highly recommend doing whenever using a servo is have it set or sort of like prepped in your setup. So I'm going to copy that first line here, prism.set servo position. I'm going to copy it up into my setup just to make sure that when I hit that green button, this thing goes back to center. I'm even going to give a delay in here to give it time to actually move. Okay, and that's stray little bracket I'm just going to get rid of. So we're going to go ahead and push this code. I will include the code below the video, and we're going to see if this works, and I'll come back when it's done. Alright, so we're ready to go. It has uploaded. Just as a reminder, these basic lessons we're doing at the start of the year, we want to make sure we understand what our code is doing. So when I look at setup, it's going to begin when I hit the green button. It's going to set the servo position to 0 degrees. That's the reset. It's going to wait a 1/5 of a second. And it's going to enter our repeating program loop. And it's going to go 0 degrees, wait a 1/5 of a second, go to 90 degrees, wait a 1/5 of a second, go to 180. It's upper range. Wait 1/5 of a second, and then it should repeat the whole process. So I should see my servo sort of stutter between 3 positions, 0, 90, 180, back to 0. Let's see. What we can see there is that the servo is not making it all the way to 180 degrees. The problem with that is because I don't think we're giving it enough time. Okay, so that's a problem. We could also look at setting the servo speed of a motor, or we could look at whether there is a different function. Okay, I'm not seeing anything great off the top of the page here, but maybe what we need to do is change the speed of the servo. Okay, ramp up the speed. We would do that in the setup, and then if that doesn't work, we would come back and look at setting the position with more of a delay statement. So let's go ahead and see what we can do here, because ideally we should have seen it go across 3 positions across an arc of 180 degrees, and instead we just saw it jump back and forth like this. So let's go ahead, go up here and do our main setup statement, and we're going to call prism, and we're going to set the servo speed on port number 1. Again, the function is in your book on page 168. And we're going to set the speed to a value of 100, make sure it's max speed. And you know what, I think we're going to give it enough time to actually do this. Let's go for a full half a second. And there are other ways to program servo behaviors. This is just a great way to sort of start and learn how to debug your code and modify it as you go. So we're going to go ahead and push that to the board. Okay, you could go ahead and verify it first, compile it yourself, but I'm fairly confident mine's going to push without errors. So I'm just going to hit push, and I will join you in a second. All right, the code is done. Just as a reminder, we increased our speed. Okay, so our servo speed is at max speed, so it should be a lot more peppy going between those 3 positions of 0, 90, and 180 degrees. And we increased our delay statement, the time that we're allowing the servo to move. So hopefully we should see a much more dynamic motion this time, where it goes to 0 and stops, and then to 90 and stops, and then to 180 and stops. So let's go ahead and see it in action. Okay, so I wanted to run it there for a minute just to show you what was happening. One thing we're noting is that we're not getting a full 180 degrees, and that's okay. Because these servos aren't going to go to both the minimum and maximum range like 100%. So what I'm going to do is take this servo, or this wrench here, and I'm going to find where is 0 degrees by allowing it to come and tap it, and then I'm going to hold it there as best as I can to see the full motion, okay, without having to get a protractor. So let's go ahead and start it up. So as you can see here, there's the 0. And in fact, we're probably turning from 0 to probably about 170 degrees. We're not getting the full 180 degrees. That is a problem. We could look at giving it longer times, and let's go ahead and hit stop. And let's just see what happens when we give it a longer time. Let's try giving it 800 for those 2 positions. But after the 180 degrees, we're not giving it a lot of time to get back to 0. So maybe, you know what, let's go with a full second. So we're going to go with 1,000 microseconds just to play it safe, make sure everything has enough time. So we're going to push that code. I'll be right back with you. So we're going to go ahead and hit go. This time I've recentered my servo to 0, and let's see what happens. That's much better. So we can see 0, 90, and 180 off of this axis right about here. So there's the 180, there's 0, 90, 180. So by giving it more time, even though it's moving faster, we're getting a more accurate positional response. Okay, so go ahead and play with your servo, get things working. If you want to build a little flag out of paper, stick it in there and it can wave the flag at you.